Also, for more on this, we have with us Dr. Giorgia Meloni, who is a defense expert and director at the European Resilience Initiative Center. Now, he's also the former director at the Heinrich Böll Foundation Bureau in Kiev. Thank you so much for taking out your time and joining us.
Thank you so much for having invited me today.
Let me begin by asking you, Russia is not wasting any time to make progress in Ukrainian territory. The attacks and counterattacks are continuing, and it seems it has escalated in the past few days. How long and how far do you think Russia will go, considering that it has already attacked the farthest city in Ukraine, that's Lviv, while the debris from a downed drone was found next to Ukraine's parliament building? And of course, to note here, this comes amid Ukrainian parliament's reshuffling.
Well, Russia will go as far as it can, and that means that Russia will use all its power, all missiles available, all drones available to hit as much as possible of Ukrainian targets, including, of course, civilian residential area. During the last week, we have seen that not only the city bordering Russia, like Sumy or Kharkiv, have been hit, but also Kyiv massively. Lviv in the west of Ukraine has been hit massively for the first time since months. And this is clear a sign that Russia wants to put pressure not on Ukraine, but on the West, and demonstrate what Russia wanted to persuade West for a longer time, that you cannot win this war, etc. Of course, it's a lie. Of course, it's propaganda, because Ukraine can win this war. Ukraine has demonstrated by Kursk and Kherson. But Russia wants to demonstrate to the West that this war is so costly and so complicated that it's better to stop supporting Ukraine. And that is why Russia puts all into these bombardments of Ukrainian cities to scare the West, not Ukraine.
Right. It's great that you mentioned Sumy. Now, the latest attack took place in Sumy, that lies just across the border from Russia's Kursk region, and you mentioned that as well, where Kiev launched a shock offensive on August 6th, which was aimed in part at creating a buffer zone inside Russia. Do you think Ukraine has failed to do so, as Russia is still pushing back?
Well, I think that Ukraine is achieving pretty impressive success. And I've been to Ukraine-occupied territory of Kursk region just 3 weeks ago. I've been to Sumy recently. And the situation is quite different compared to what it used to be. But of course, the square of Russian territory, which Ukraine has already taken, is not sufficient yet for creating a buffer zone. To creating a really significant buffer zone, Ukraine needs to go further to the east and take control over the city of Belgorod across the border to Kharkiv region. This will create a pretty much successful buffer zone. But once again, even if Ukraine controls a buffer zone up to, let me say, 50 or 80 kilometers from the border, it will have only 120 kilometers from Sumy to Russia-controlled region, which is still not enough to prevent any strike with Iskander missile, for example, which has a distance of up to 500 kilometers. So it will be okay to protect Sumy from artillery strikes, yes, but not okay to protect Sumy from Iskander strike. And once again, Lviv is about 900 kilometers from the front line, still has been hit. So it is not about making the city like Sumy or Kharkiv completely protected from any type of strike, but protected from artillery strikes and some other strikes, which is already a huge success.
It's great that you mentioned the distances. Now, this comes as the Ukrainian president is asking for long-range missiles from the West. Now, how long and far do you think the allies can stand with Ukraine, especially U.S., also considering the November elections?
Well, that is exactly the point. You have perfectly described it. Russia points on all this missile terror against Ukraine, having in mind the November elections in the United States. They want to scare people as much as possible until the elections, because they know there will be most probably no significant decisions being taken before November. And then they hope that the new president will be more supportive for the Russia's ideas of what to do with Ukraine. So Russians pull everything what they have to the front line to create this pressure until the November elections. Still, Ukraine knows it pretty well too. So Ukraine has recently announced that they have drones which can hit Russian territory in a distance of up to 1,800 kilometers, practically covering the whole European part of Russia. And the Ukrainians push these attacks on Russian power plants and strategic targets like airfields or ammunition depots like we have seen last night, and try to pressure on Russia on their turn. So this is more than just a military game. It is more a game of political statements, of diplomatic pressure on international area, despite the fact, of course, that the Ukrainians who are suffering from Russian terror, air raids and missile attacks, they suffer for real, not on the diplomatic scale.
Right. Talking of diplomatic here, of course, since it's a conflict, we're looking at resolutions. One last question before you go, and we would like you to briefly give your answer here. Now, Italian Prime Minister has said, and she's pointed out, that the importance of China and India in getting the war resolved. Your reaction to that?
Well, of course, it is important to have these nations like India and China on the board of negotiation. The problem is that many, especially China, I'm afraid they don't quite understand, or they don't want to understand the goals which Russia sets for them. India, maybe, but China still thinks or wants us to believe, they think that it's only about like some tensions between Ukraine and Russia, ignoring the fact that Russia wants to destroy Ukraine completely. And if you want to be destroyed by your opponent, there cannot be any diplomatic solution because there is no middle ground in that.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. That was Dr. Giorgia Meloni, who is a defense expert, joining us from Berlin. Thank you so much for joining and giving your opinions.
Thank you so much.